So as you've been learning the last few weeks, basically pretty much all tags are encompassed by a plethora of properties that affect how the tag is going to actually appear in the web browser. Some of the properties, like the background color or borders, are things that are immediately obvious if you style them, and other things are invisible, like padding and margin. They basically provide some empty space on one or more sides of the border. And by understanding how these different properties work, you can go ahead and create attractive columns, sidebars, you can control space around them, and you can basically have control over the white space of your web page. And your web pages will look much less cluttered, more light, and more professional if you go ahead and introduce these concepts into your web page design. Basically, when you think of all these things together, the CSS properties such as margin, padding, and borders, they make up one of the most important concepts in CSS, and that is going to be the box model. So we're going to be talking about the box model. Basically, since the earliest days of the web, designers used to use tables to create the underlying layout grid for a web page. And what that meant is it meant that they would add all sorts of ugly presentational hacks and unnecessary markup. They would use things like spacer GIFs and transparent GIFs, line breaks and non-breaking spaces, and they would also be creating much more complex table structures and also using nested tables in order to achieve the desired layout. Using the techniques that I just mentioned are going to go ahead and make a web page that is very hard to load because it's very complex and the code is just a big huge mess. So along comes CSS, and basically it allows us to be able to position the XHTML elements with much greater accuracy and without adding all those presentational elements into your markup that basically pollute the content and make the code difficult to decipher. With CSS properties such as margin, padding, and borders, and CSS techniques like floating and clearing, you can achieve the same, or in my opinion even better, results than what was previously used. You'll also get the added benefit of less cross-browser and platform inaccuracies, and you'll be doing this while you're keeping your markup lean and clean, and also you'll have the ability to share the styles you write between multiple pages, and that is going to give you lightweight code. You're going to have code that's easy to read, and it's going to be more friendly for your users, for the search engines, and much more accessible. And finally, it's going to make a site that's much easier to update and modify. So how successful you are with these techniques is going to depend on how well you understand the box model. Also the position property and the display property, and we'll be discussing those all in upcoming movies. We're going to start off with the box model. The box model basically describes the positioning controls that exist for every single element in your markup. The positioning controls that you can achieve while using the box model are really quite sophisticated once you understand how it works together. So let's just take a quick look at this page, and basically the first thing that might be confusing to you is that a web browser basically creates all tags, pretty much everything on your page, as a little box, but it's an invisible box. So obviously when I show you this page right here, which has several paragraphs, it has an H1 tag and it has an unordered list, you don't necessarily see any boxes on the page. I'm going to come to my code, so here's my code view, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a style that is going to allow us to see the boxes. So I'll make a style for my actually I'm using an H1. Let's do a style for the H1, the paragraph tags, and the UL tags. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define a property for border, and I'm going to go ahead and set the border so that it is 5 pixels, it's solid, and actually I don't need commas here, it's solid, and it's going to just be red. And let's also just change the font family to a sans serif font. So I'm going to keep this very simple. I'm going to save my page and I'll refresh in the browser. And now you can see that all of my elements on the page have a border around them. You can actually clearly see the boxes that make up my page. So this is what we're going to be discussing now. Every element that you create in your markup basically is going to produce a box on the page. So XHTML page is actually just an arrangement of boxes. By default, you usually don't see the border of each element, and so the box is not visible. You don't see the background of the box, so the box is transparent. So you might not even realize that the boxes are there. But understanding how to control the appearance and placement of the element boxes is basically the first step to understanding the box model. So we'll go ahead and discuss this in the next movie.